Yeah, I. It's been like.
It was needless to say that you barely got any sleep that night. You were restless as you ran scenario after scenario on how you would break up with the boy you had been with for 3 years. You had also stayed up because the second you did fall asleep, you knew the next moment when you opened your eyes you would be that much closer to doing the one thing you had never dreamed of. But here you were anyway, 7:30 on a Friday morning, hair a mess, bags under your eyes, still in your pajamas, and that much closer to finally getting it over with. Every step you took as you approached Midtown felt like you were in a funeral march. Time seemed to have dragged on endlessly as the pounding of your heart was deafening in your ears, but once you opened your high school's door and stepped in, you were back in the present, a loud buzz of the school day filling your ears.
Yeah, I try to keep it on the low. I try to get you off my mind. I try to keep my feelings inside, but it's hard sometimes.
Hey loser, you jumped as MJ sidled next to you. She narrowed her eyes at you. What's wrong with you? She asked, taking in your appearance and your jumpiness. You swallowed and shook your head. Didn't sleep well, you muttered in an attempt to shake off the attention she was giving you. Bullshit, she simply answered. MJ stopped in the middle of the hallway and grabbed your arm, making you face her. You look awful. You're wearing pajamas. Your hair's a mess. Your eyes are red and you have crazy dark bags under them and— Alright, can we not do this in the middle of the hallway? You said impatiently as you pulled her to a set of nearby lockers. And I get it. I look like shit. Yeah, so what happened? Nothing. Bullshit, she said slowly as she cut you off. What happened? You sighed and looked around to see if anyone was overhearing as you blinked back a set of tears. I've decided I'm gonna do it, you said, looking back at her. She furrowed her eyebrows. Wait, you don't mean— She trailed off. Not even MJ, the most forward and honest person you knew, could treat this situation the same way she did with everything else. You nodded, looking down at your feet. Oh, she simply said. When? Tonight, you answered. I haven't asked if I could come over yet, but I need to get this over with tonight. She placed a comforting hand on your shoulder, which you greatly appreciated, knowing MJ was never a touchy kind of person. Well, good luck, I guess, she muttered. Let's get our stuff. The two of you headed to your lockers to gather your books for your morning classes. You kept glancing down the hallway for Peter as you put your combination in. You stiffened once you saw a familiar mop of brown hair amongst the various students in the hallway. You quickly turned back to your locker and pulled it open. Your heart was racing as you waited for him to approach. The plan for right now was when he came by his locker, you were going to ask if you could come over at around 6. May usually served dinner at 6:30, and it tended to be the best time of the day to get a hold of him due to the fact that he was out on patrol before and after dinner. But still, it was a gamble, because as of late he had been skipping dinner a lot since May knew that he was Spider-Man, and now he didn't have to cover up his tracks by being at dinner on time. Hey, why are you in your pajamas? Peter asked, standing at his locker. Woke up late. Didn't have time to change. You mumbled quickly as you turned to him. Look, you seem a little off lately, Peter interrupted. You know you can talk to me, right? You faltered. You didn't even know where to begin with that statement. When the fuck did he think you'd be able to talk to him? During the dates he stood you up on? Over text where you were pretty sure he had muted your conversation? He was really making the whole breaking up thing a lot easier than you hoped. You blinked, completely dumbfounded before you blurted out, Actually, I'd like to take you up on that offer. There was a slight snarky undertone to your voice, but thankfully he hadn't picked up on it. Can I come over tonight? Around 6? A look of guilt, which you've become all too familiar with, immediately covered his features, and you felt ready to scream. I can't. It's Friday, and you know Fridays are my busiest nights. Look, Peter, I really need to talk to you tonight. I promise it won't take long. I just want to talk, you said desperately. Reluctantly, Peter finally nodded his head in agreement. Okay, you can come by for a bit then. You nodded, a sigh of relief passing through your lips. I'm gonna go to class now. See you later, you muttered before walking off to your history class.
I try to keep it on the low. I try to get you off my mind. I try to keep my feelings inside, but it's hard sometimes.
It was almost ironic how fast the days seemed to go when all you wanted was for time to move slower for once. History had gone by way too quickly. Everyone split up with their partners to work on the project some more, but it ended up with Brad having to comfort and encourage you yet again about how you were making the right decision. And before you knew it, 3 more periods had passed and the bell for lunch had started to ring, which meant having to see Peter again. At least that was what you thought until you stepped into the lunchroom, MJ by your side, and noticed that Peter wasn't in his usual spot at the table. As the two of you approached Ned, who had been beginning to eat his lunch by himself, you raised an eyebrow and asked, "Where's Peter?" "He's taking a test with Miss Warren," Ned said through a mouthful of food, while MJ stepped around the table so she could take her usual spot next to Ned. "Good," MJ said, dropping her bag onto the table with a bang before dropping in her seat. "Then this is the perfect time to tell you that Yasmin's breaking up with Peter tonight." "MJ!" you shrieked. "What the hell?" She shrugged her shoulders while you took your seat across from them. "What? He was gonna find out eventually," she muttered. Ned's jaw dropped and his eyes widened in shock. "Is she telling the truth?" You sighed and nodded. "See, I always knew this would happen," he said in disappointment. You shot him a look. "Dude, I didn't mean it like that. It's just, how many relationships last in high school? I was always nervous about the two of you breaking up, and now you are, and it's going to completely throw off our group dynamic." "Yeah," MJ agreed sarcastically. "Now you're going to have to share custody of Ned." Ned turned and raised his eyebrow at her. "What about you?" She scoffed. "Yasmin's stuck with me. Peter doesn't even have visiting rights." You rolled your eyes. "My life isn't a joke, guys," you mumbled, which quieted the two down. "And anyway, it's not gonna be like that. We're gonna stay friends." Ned frowned. "But what if—" You cut him off. "No buts. We're gonna stay friends. Peter and I were friends before we dated and we'll stay friends after," you said with the finality that Ned didn't want to debate with. So he sighed and nodded his head. "It's probably for the best, you know," Ned said. "I love Peter, but he hasn't been very good to you lately. It makes the rest of us sad to see you upset." You gave Ned a tight-lipped smile and nodded, his words making you feel a bit emotional. "Thanks. Anyway," MJ said, "what made you decide to do it?" You bit your lip, torn between telling the truth and lying. You knew MJ would have something to say if you told her Brad was the reason you finally decided to go through with it. "Let's just say I kinda had my eyes open and I realized that me and Peter just aren't working out anymore." MJ hummed, narrowing her eyes skeptically, and you knew she probably put the pieces together. But if she did, she didn't say anything. Instead, she stood up and said, "Let's get lunch, then you can rant about what a terrible boyfriend Peter is." Eventually the day wore on. The final bell rang, reminded Peter you were coming at 6, went home, rehearsed your breakup speech about 100 times in a mirror, cried a couple of times, and before you knew it, it was 5:45 and you were leaving your place to head over to Peter's. You weren't surprised in the slightest when you went over just to hear May tell you Peter wasn't in yet. Instead, you ended up talking and eating dinner with May, which had to be the most awkward experience ever, to have dinner with her when the whole purpose for going over in the first place was to break up with her nephew. You had a hunch she figured out why you were there by the way you were acting. You just seemed off. You were stuttery and easily distracted, not to mention the stuff she hadn't noticed, such as your pounding heart and clammy hands. But just before she let you go wait in Peter's room per your request, she gave you the tightest and longest hug she's ever given you. You hugged her back tightly. By that time, it was already 7 o'clock and there was still no sign of Peter, so you laid on his bed, sent him a text, which you were already aware that it would be pointless, but still. You decided to watch a show on your phone to kill time at least. Eventually 7 o'clock turned into 8 o'clock, then 9 o'clock. Then by 9:15 you had fallen asleep. You were determined to wait him out, even if that meant staying until 3 in the morning. You suddenly woke up by a rustling sound in the window. Your head snapped towards it, and in the dark room you could make out Spider-Man's silhouette as he climbed through the window. You quickly glanced at the clock on the nightstand and saw that it was already 11 o'clock. You sat up on the bed and angled yourself towards Peter, who hadn't noticed you were there yet, as he shut the window and tugged his mask off, his brown curls sticking up in multiple directions. When he turned around and spotted your figure, he stopped, and you could already make up the look of surprise on his face that quickly morphed into guilt from the moonlight that filtered in through the closed window. "Yasmin," he mumbled guiltily. You ignored it as he leaned over to his nightstand and turned on his lamp, dimly lighting the room. "Peter?" You finally answered back. "Look, I'm so sorry," he started, stepping closer to you. "I completely forgot," and you put up your hand, silencing him, and he started to nervously gnaw on his lip. You sighed again. "It's fine. I don't need to hear any apologies. I just want to talk." Peter sensed something was off, realizing the situation was much more serious than he originally thought, so he placed his mask on the bed and sat down, facing you. You took in a deep breath and collected your thoughts. You stopped as you suddenly realized that this was actually about to happen, that you were going to break up with the first boy you've ever fallen in love with, the boy you still love. You started again, but the words were caught in your throat. Peter furrowed his eyebrows in worry. What's wrong? You could hear the blood rushing in your ears, realizing with a sudden fear that you physically couldn't get the words out. You were only able to remember every good memory you've had with Peter in that moment, as you seemingly forgot how miserable you've been these last few months. But then, almost as if someone read your mind, your phone vibrated. The screen lit up to show a text from Brad. Did you do it yet? And then you remembered last night, and how he confronted you as you cried into him, how he let you vent, and how he told you you didn't deserve to be in an unhappy and an unloving relationship, how you should break up with Peter. So with new intent, you clenched your fist and shut your eyes tight, bracing yourself as you blurted out, "I want to break up."
Yeah, it's been like...
The silence that suddenly followed was deafening. You slowly peeked your eyes open, and your heart dropped upon seeing the look of shock on Peter's face. What? He asked with furrowed eyebrows. "Please don't make me say it again," you pleaded. "But why?" He didn't look sad, just confused. He looked down on your lap and started to blink back tears. "Come on, Pete. You know why." "Is it because of Spider-Man?" You sighed. "How can he be so blind?" you thought sadly to yourself. "No, you know that's never been a problem." "Then why?" Instead of talking, you pulled out your phone and opened your text with Peter and dropped the phone in his lap. He picked it up and scrolled through the conversation. There had been so many messages from you. Simple texts that just asked about his day, or a text good morning and good night, and almost all of them hadn't gotten a reply back, and he suddenly felt some form of guilt forming in his chest. "We barely talk or go on dates anymore," your quiet voice said. "You stand me up all the time. I feel like we don't know each other anymore, Pete." "That's not true. Of course we know each other." "Peter," you interrupted him, looking at him now. "Can you even remember the last time we even kissed? Like, actually kissed?" He fell silent, no instances coming to mind. "Exactly. I'm sorry," was all he said. You nodded, wiping your eyes. "I know you are, but I can't keep doing this. I'm tired of crying. I'm so fucking tired of it." Your phone, which was still in Peter's hands, buzzed again, and out of habit, Peter glanced down, and what followed ending up turning into an absolute shit show. Why is Brad Davis texting you? Your heart stopped. Peter stared down at the screen in utter confusion before directing his gaze towards you. You felt like you were suddenly caught in a huge conspiracy against your boyfriend. And why is he asking if you broke up with me yet? Peter's confusion was turning into anger. You now realize that maybe talking about a relationship you've had for 3 years with some boy you barely knew may not have been the smartest thing in the world, but in your defense, you had been thinking about ending things with Peter way before Brad came along. "Why are you talking to Brad about this?" he asked, his voice raising as he now jumped to his feet. You stood up as well. "Okay, calm down, Peter." "No, don't tell me to calm down. Just tell me why you were talking to Brad Davis about us." You groaned in frustration. "I was talking to him last night, okay?" you yelled, finally matching his own voice, and you prayed that the walls were thick enough that May couldn't hear the two of you yelling back and forth. "We hung out for a bit after working on a project, and one thing led to another, and wait, don't tell me you two kissed," he suddenly shouted, remembering Ned's words from the day before and suddenly feeling insecure, wondering if he was right. Your face held a look of complete shock. "Are you kidding me? We've been together for 3 years, Peter, and you think I'd fucking cheat on you? Alright, fine," he shouted angrily, knowing that he was out of line to accuse you of that. "Then what happened?" You took a deep breath to steady your anger. "I was upset and I was crying. He comforted me and he may have suggested that I should break up with you," you said slowly. "And you're taking his advice? Yasmin, you barely know Brad and you're letting him tell you what to do? Did it ever cross to you to, I don't know, talk to me before crying in the arms of some boy you threw your hands up in the air in frustration and yelled, "MJ said I should break up with you too." You were shaking with anger. Peter fell silent upon hearing that one of his best friends told his girlfriend to break up with him. And in my defense, Talking to you seems kind of impossible. I mean, just look at tonight. I asked you to meet me at 6 and you show up at 11. You bit your lip but continued. I'm not happy being your girlfriend anymore, you said quietly, calming down a bit. And I know you think I'm annoying when I keep texting you and calling you and trying to make plans all the time. I know you are, because if you weren't, you wouldn't keep ignoring me. And the truth is that I don't feel like I'm your girlfriend anymore, and I felt like that for a long time, and I'm tired of waiting for you to come around, you said softly. I want to stay friends though. You're still important to me. He stayed silent, and you exhaled softly. I guess I'll see you Monday then, you muttered as you made your way past him into the door with slow movements. Your hand had just touched the doorknob when you heard him say, Fine, whatever, we're done, he said coldly. You can go cry to Brad now. Maybe he can be your new boyfriend. Rage immediately started bubbling within you again, and you spun around on your heels, seeing his back was still towards you. You know what? Fuck you, Peter, you spit out. If he was going to act like this, accuse you of cheating when he was the one who treated you like shit, friendship be damned, you wanted nothing to do with him. I can't believe how easily you actually made this. I take it back. Don't fucking talk to me anymore, asshole. And not for nothing, but you were a fucking awful boyfriend, you prick. With that, you turned back around and swung his bedroom door open, slamming it behind you. You stormed down the hallway and past the living room where May was, ignoring her worried stare as you left Peter's apartment for good. It wasn't until you were inside the elevator that you broke down in tears. You were infuriated and your heart hurt so bad. You knew he would be fine, which upset you the most. You knew that he would realize that you hadn't had much of a place in his life these last few months as he went through his normal routine, and that he would easily move on. But you knew it would be much harder for you. Peter had been the one thing on your mind for such a long time that it hurt to think about not having him in your life anymore. But you had to be fine. You needed to move on, and you had just taken the first step to finally healing your shattered heart. You felt some relief despite the pain. This was the last time you ever had to deal with Peter's bullshit.